When Caroline Leavitt walked into the Fox News studio shortly after the passing of Pope Francis, viewers expected a direct and political conversation from the White House press secretary. But from the moment she sat down, something felt off. Host Sean Hannity tried to open with his usual light banter, but Caroline wasn't playing along. Her attention was locked on an old envelope with a deep red Vatican seal sitting quietly on the table. That single detail shifted everything. What started as a standard interview slowly unraveled into something far more unexpected. A live reveal, a guarded secret, and a truth that had remained hidden for years. And when she finally spoke, her words hinted at something that could change how we think about faith, power, and long-buried conspiracies. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and make sure you're subscribed so you never miss another behind-the-scenes story. Under the studio lights, the audience erupted in applause as Caroline entered. The room buzzed with anticipation, but the real tension centered on that envelope, sealed in red wax, unmoved, unexplained. Caroline offered a quick smile. Through her eyes betrayed something deeper. She glanced at the envelope before taking her seat, her hands gripping each. Other tightly. Sean Hannity, ever the polished host, began with ease. Welcome, everyone. Tonight we're joined by White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Thanks for coming, Caroline, she responded softly. Thank you, Sean. He leaned in slightly. You've been making waves, from your work on the Trump campaign to influencing some big policy calls. But what should we expect tonight? More on the administration, or something different? A few audience members chuckled, but Caroline didn't share the smile. Instead, she took a deep breath. I'm not here to talk politics tonight, Sean. I'm here because of a promise I made. To Pope Francis. The room froze. Hannity raised an eyebrow, intrigued but calm. A promise to Pope Francis? That's not what we expected. Caroline nodded, her voice quieter now but firm. He entrusted me with something, a secret. And tonight, I'm ending the silence. A low wave of whispers swept through the studio. Phones started to quietly rise in the audience. The envelope, once a background detail, now seemed to hold gravity of its own. Caroline stayed still, her focus fixed on the envelope, as if hearing echoes only she understood. Hannity, now aware the conversation had shifted completely, leaned forward. You said this was a promise to the Pope. That's a strong claim. What exactly happened between you two? She paused, gathering her thoughts. It happened not long ago, she began, her tone steady but heavy. I didn't get an email. No formal memo, just a handwritten letter delivered to me in person by a priest. The studio hushed. It was while I was in Rome, she continued, her voice gaining strength. I was there with President Trump's delegation. We were at the Vatican for discussions on religious freedom, something I had spoken about a lot during the campaign. I assumed I was just there to support the visit, nothing more. But then one night at the hotel, there was a knock. She paused again, her gaze distant. A priest, he didn't say much, just handed me an envelope. Inside, a brief note in slanted black ink. She quoted it softly. I wish to meet you. Just the two of us. At Casa. Santa Marta, come at midnight. Francis. Sean Hannity blinked, clearly pulled into the gravity of her words. A personal invitation from Pope Francis? What did you think? Caroline gave a faint smile. Honestly, I thought it was a mistake or a prank, but as she would soon realize, it was anything but that. I'm just a girl from New Hampshire who ended up working in politics, Caroline began, her voice steady yet full of feeling. Not someone with ties to the Vatican. But something about that letter, maybe its honesty, maybe its boldness, made it impossible to ignore. At midnight, a plain black car picked her up outside the hotel. No sirens, no escorts. Just one silent driver. They moved quietly through the narrow streets of Rome until they reached a hidden side entrance to the Vatican. No tourists, no press. Just another priest waiting to guide her through cold stone passageways where torchlight flickered along the walls. Finally, she arrived at a small room inside Casa Santa Marta. There he was, Pope Francis, sitting quietly, on a wooden chair, dressed in a simple white cassock. The studio audience barely breathed as Caroline described the moment. "He looked smaller than I expected," she said softly. "Tired, like the weight of the world was pressing down on him. But his eyes, they were different, clear, deep, as if they could see right through me." He rose and gently took her hand. "Thank you for coming, Caroline," he said. "I heard your speech on faith and freedom. It didn't sound like politics, it sounded real." She paused, visibly holding back emotion. We sat down, and he didn't talk about governments or headlines. He spoke about the church, about what he'd witnessed, what he felt. He told me being pope wasn't about honor. It was about bearing a burden. And then came a striking admission. "Some days," she quoted him, "I pray and hear only silence, not from God, but from the people around me." Sean Hannity interjected carefully. "You mean he felt alone, even inside the Vatican?" Caroline nodded. "More than alone. He said there were shadows in the church, people who wore the title of Christian, but acted for power, or money, or worse." She looked down briefly, then continued. "He said every step he took toward reform felt like walking on thin ice. And then he looked me in the eyes and said, 'I need someone outside this system, someone whose voice can tell the truth. And I've chosen you.'" Caroline reached out, touching the envelope gently, a gesture that drew every viewer's attention. "He handed me this, sealed with red wax, and he said, 'Don't open it yet, only when I'm gone. You'll know when it's time.'" She wanted to ask more, but he simply placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "Faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to ask the right questions." Caroline recounted, returning to her hotel in silence. The envelope, heavy in her bag, felt like a stone. "I didn't know why he chose me. A political spokesperson, not a theologian," she said. "But something about his presence, his voice, made me feel I couldn't turn away." Hannity leaned forward, his tone hushed. "Did you open right after? That night?" She shook her head. "No, I made a promise and I kept it, even though it kept me up at night." Her voice sharpened. "But when he passed, I knew I couldn't hold back anymore." The studio fell silent. Caroline looked directly into the camera, her voice clear and unwavering. "He trusted me with this, and tonight I'm honoring that trust." Her hands clutched the edge of the table, almost bracing for what came next. The red-sealed envelope remained still, a symbol of a truth she'd carried since Rome. Hannity, now fully drawn in, asked, "Caroline, you just shared something extraordinary, a private meeting with Pope Francis. This envelope, but why now? Why reveal all of this tonight?" Caroline exhaled slowly. Her eyes swept across the audience, searching, maybe grounding herself. "After that night at the Vatican," she began, "I thought life would return to normal. I thought I'd return home, get back to my duties, speak to the press. Like before, and forget about the envelope," Caroline said, her tone growing more reflective. "But I was wrong." She recounted what happened after arriving back in the U.S., when her role as White House press secretary was suddenly disrupted by unsettling signs. "A week after Rome, I found a small note tucked in my purse," she explained. "I had no idea how it got there, just one short message written in blue ink. 'Keep the envelope secret.' Words kill faster than knives." At first she brushed it off. "I figured it was a joke, someone messing around." But then more notes followed. One slipped under her hotel room door in D.C. Another arrived by mail. No return address. "They all said the same thing," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Stay quiet, or pay the price." The audience stirred uneasily, but Caroline pressed on. "I started feeling like I was being watched," she admitted. "Nothing dramatic, just little things. A black car parked too long outside my office. A phone call. With no words, just breathing, before the line went dead." She paused, taking a breath. "At first I tried to tell myself it was stressful. Maybe I was overthinking, but deep down, I knew. Hannity leaned forward, concern creeping into his voice. Did you tell anyone? The police? White House security? Caroline shook her head, a trace of a bitter smile playing on her lips. I wanted to, but I was scared. Scared they'd think I was losing it, or worse, that someone would try to take the envelope. She explained how she ended up locking it in a small safe at home. But every night it felt like I was sleeping. Next to a ticking clock, she said quietly, waiting. Then her voice softened, more intimate, like revealing something even she hadn't said aloud before. And then one night, something happened. I had a dream. Not just any dream. One I can still feel. In the dream, she found herself standing in a vast hall, marble walls glowing with light, but completely empty. No chairs, no crowd, just silence. And at the far end, Pope Francis. The studio fell quiet again, the energy turning reverent. But he wasn't dressed like before, she said. No papal robes, just a plain gray cloak, like a traveler. He walked toward her, radiating both warmth and sorrow. He told me, Caroline, you carry the voice the world needs, but you must choose. Protect yourself, or let the truth lead you. She paused, then added, and then, he mentioned something I hadn't thought about in years. Her voice dipped into memory. When I was little, my grandmother used to take me to church back in New Hampshire. One time, during a rough patch in our family, I remember kneeling before a statue of Mary and praying. I didn't even know what I was praying for, but I remember the peace. In the dream, she said, he looked at me and said, you prayed for light as a child. Now you must carry it, even if darkness follows. Hannity, clearly moved, asked quietly, do you think it was just a dream, or something more? Caroline shrugged gently, her voice weighted. I don't. No, but when I woke up, I was drenched in sweat, shaking. It felt like he really spoke to me, like he was reaching from somewhere else. And that, she said, was the moment things shifted. I realized I couldn't hide anymore. This envelope, it wasn't just a message. It was a responsibility. The following days brought even more pressure. I noticed my team acting differently. One of my closest advisors asked if I was okay, like he sensed something was off. A journalist even called, hunting he'd heard whispers about Vatican secrets tied to me. She exhaled slowly, her expression growing firmer. I felt like I was in a game, and I didn't know the rules. She turned directly to Hannity, her voice unshakable now. But what made me speak out wasn't the notes or the strange calls, or even the dream. She leaned forward slightly. It was the moment I saw the news, that he'd passed. Caroline described sitting alone in her office, watching the funeral coverage play out. I felt this deep ache, not just grief, something else, a knowing. That if I stayed silent, I'd betray not just him, but something bigger than myself. She gently touched the envelope on the table. Her fingers brushed against the seal like it was a living thing. I brought this here tonight, because silence is no longer an option, she said, steady and clear. He didn't choose me because I'm the smartest or the most powerful. He chose me because I had the courage to speak. When the moment came, Hannity lowered his voice. And that moment, is it now? Caroline looked straight at him. Yes, but before I open it, before anything, I need everyone watching to understand. Her voice grew stronger. What I'm about to reveal isn't just about the Pope. It's about all of us. The studio fell completely silent. It was the kind of quiet that settles right before something irreversible happens, like the world holding its breath at the edge of a revelation. Sean Hannity leaned forward, his voice low, curious. Caroline, you've told us about the secret meeting, the warnings, and that haunting dream. But why now? Why here on this stage are you breaking the silence? Caroline glanced down at the envelope, her fingers lightly brushing over its seal as if drawing strength from it. It wasn't one single moment, she answered quietly. Her words were soft but clear, each syllable deliberate. It was thousands of small ones, as moments that stacked up until I couldn't pretend anymore. She shared what those days were like after learning of Pope Francis's death. When I saw the headlines, I watched his funeral from my office. It hit me hard. It felt like a door was slammed shut, and I was locked behind it. I kept thinking, I let him down. Her gaze never left the envelope. This wasn't just paper. It was trust, and I was terrified of what it might mean. Terrified of what opening it would cost me. She spoke about the weight of her job. Being the White House press secretary meant constant noise, reporters, statements, spin. But even amid that chaos, the warnings didn't stop. One showed, up in my briefcase on a flight to Florida. Another was left on my windshield. She paused. Each one said the same thing. Stay silent or lose everything. The fear grew inside her. I started questioning everyone. Staff, friends, even. My husband noticed I wasn't myself. But how do you explain something you can't even understand? Hannity cut in again, his tone sharper now. Did you ever think about walking away? Locking that envelope in a drawer and just forgetting it? Caroline looked straight at him, unwavering. Every single day, she admitted. I have a baby son, not even a year old, a husband who believes in me, a career I've fought hard to earn. And this envelope? It could destroy all of that. She inhaled slowly, then continued. But I kept hearing his voice from that night in Rome. He didn't choose me because I'm fearless. He chose me because he believed I'd find the courage. When it truly mattered. Her voice took on a sharper edge. And then one morning everything shifted. She described standing in her kitchen feeding her son, when a plain brown package arrived. No name, no return address. Inside was a typed note, she said. No signature, just 5 words. The time has come. Speak. And with it was a small silver cross, the same kind my grandmother used to wear. That, she said, was the moment she knew. I couldn't delay it anymore. The room remained locked in stillness, the entire studio drawn in by her calm intensity. That night, she continued, I paced my living room for hours, envelope in hand. I thought about my family, about the risk, but I also thought about those kids at the church back in New Hampshire, the ones who come looking for something to believe in. If what's in here can protect even one of them, how can I stay silent? She explained why she came to speak on live TV. I needed a place where no one could cut or spin my words, where the world would hear it raw, unfiltered. This moment, this was the only way. She admitted her team thought it was a routine policy interview. They don't know what this is really about, she said. Only I do. Hannity's voice softened, sensing the shift. Aren't you scared for yourself, for the White House? Caroline nodded slowly. Of course I am, she said, her honesty cutting through the air. But fear isn't an excuse to break a promise. I picture him, in that quiet room, handing me something he couldn't say out loud. If I keep this buried, I'll live. Every day knowing I could have saved someone, and didn't. She sat straighter now, both hands flat on the table, the envelope resting between her and Hannity like a loaded question. Before I came here, she said softly, I did something. I hadn't in a long time. I went to my bedroom, shut the door, and I knelt down. I didn't pray for answers, she added. I prayed for courage. Her voice was steady. I saw my grandmother's face, heard her telling me to stand tall, and I felt him, somewhere, urging me not to run. The audience still hadn't made a sound. No coughs, no movement, just the weight of her words filling the space. I'm not trying to be a hero, she said, her voice now glowing with conviction. I'm here because a man who carried the world asked me to carry a part of it, and tonight I will. Hannity took a breath, then asked what everyone was thinking. So, what now, Caroline? You're holding the envelope. Are you ready to show us what's inside? She didn't reply right away. Instead, she lifted the envelope gently, the red wax seal catching the studio light. This isn't just about what's in here, she said, her voice rising just slightly. It's about what happens when we stop running from the truth. She looked around the room, then back at the envelope. I don't know what I'll find, but I can't walk away. And in that moment, under the dimming lights, the world seemed to narrow. Just her, the envelope, and the silent question hanging in the air. What now? The audience sat on the edge of their seats, completely absorbed by the storm Caroline had just unleashed. Secret meetings, anonymous threats, cryptic dreams. And now, with that envelope in hand, everything was about to change. Hannity leaned, and sensing the shift, his voice was calm but carried weight. You've brought us through a powerful journey, Caroline, but now it's here. The envelope. What are you going to do with it? Caroline's fingers curled tighter around the sealed flap. Her eyes didn't waver, though the tremble in her hand betrayed the storm within. I've carried this long enough, she said, her voice ringing through the studio, steady and clear, the sound of someone surrendering fear. He gave it to me, because he believed I'd know when the moment came. And now I do. Without waiting for another beat, she laid the envelope on the table. From her jacket pocket she drew a small knife, the handle worn, engraved with a cross, a gift from her grandmother. The studio lights caught the blade as she lowered it to the wax seal. The sound, soft yet distinct, sliced through the quiet like the cracking of ancient glass. She broke the seal. No one spoke. The audience leaned forward, holding their breath. Caroline didn't look at them. She slid out a thin piece of paper, her fingers trembling slightly. The handwriting was unmistakable, slanted, deliberate. The Pope's. She drew a breath, grounding. Herself then began. These are his words, she said. Not mine. Her voice carried into the silence. Caroline, you are light in the storm. I write these lines with a heavy heart, for the church I love is being eaten from within. There are those who wear God's name, but they chase power instead. Not with violence, but with charm and promises they never intend to keep. I've tried to stop them, but I can't do it alone. The air in the studio thickened. People were visibly shaken, heads shaking, hands gripping armrests. She continued reading. There is a shadow, not outside, but inside. A figure cloaked as a friend. He will drain faith, not with war, but with silence. If I am gone, you must speak, for truth is the last flame that cannot be stolen. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Hannity looked shaken. Are you saying the Pope foresaw someone, a specific danger? He asked, trying to stay composed. Caroline didn't answer at first. Instead, she reached back into the envelope and pulled out a second, smaller note. The handwriting here was shakier, rushed. There was more, she said quietly. He wrote of a group. They call themselves Namen, not enemies, not allies, hidden in the shadows. They say they want to save the church, but he feared they'd destroy it first. She paused. Her voice dropped, almost a whisper, but it carried all the weight of a warning. Namen. The name hung in the air like smoke. Caroline looked up. After he passed, I received something else. She pulled out a small, unmarked USB drive from her coat. No return address, no message, just this. I watched it, and it confirmed everything. Hannity sat upright, eyebrows raised. Are you saying you have evidence? Can you show us? Caroline nodded toward the control booth. A massive screen flickered on behind them. The footage was grainy, clearly shot in secret. The Vatican's stone walls glowed in candlelight. 4 men sat cloaked in black robes, their voices hushed but urgent. One leaned in. The dark pool deal. They know too much. Another replied, tense. Then we silence them before the cardinal finds out. A third whispered a name, Namen. The feed cut off suddenly. The screen went black. Gasps erupted across the studio. Phones came up, recording. Whispers filled the space. Disbelief, fear, awe. Hannity turned to Caroline, his expression stark. This is a conspiracy within the Vatican. Are you certain this is real? Caroline didn't flinch. I don't know, she admitted. But it came with a message. The Namian lives. I had a contact at the FBI check the footage. They said it was real. Unedited, but impossible to trace. Someone wanted me to see it, and now I want everyone to. Her voice grew stronger. The Pope wasn't warning me about a single man. He was trying to expose a system, one where power hides behind faith. He trusted me because I wasn't inside the church, because I could speak when he no longer could. Suddenly, her phone lit up on the table. A message flashed across the screen. Caroline glanced down. Her face paled for a split second, a chill, cutting through her composure. But then she straightened again, swallowing hard. Hannity caught the change immediately. "Caroline, what is it? What just happened?" She picked up the phone, reading silently. Then she spoke, slowly. "You've gone too far," she read aloud. "The Namian is watching." Caroline held up her phone, its screen still glowing. Her voice trembled ever so slightly, but the steel beneath it rang loud and clear. "I just got this," she said, lifting it toward the camera. The message still flashed. "You've gone too far." "The Namian is watching." The audience stirred, voices rising in a growing murmur. Hannity's composure cracked just enough for the concern to show. "Caroline," he said, voice strained, "you're putting yourself in serious danger. Do you really believe this is worth it?" She turned to face him directly, her eyes burning with conviction. "If I stay silent," she said, "everything he fought for, it dies. I'm not just speaking for him, I'm speaking for everyone who still believes in good, even when the world does everything it can to smother it." Outside the studio, social media ignited in a frenzy. Caroline, unsealed, sheer Vatican truth, sheer hero or hysteric. Thousands of posts poured in. Some hailed her a martyr, others questioned her sanity. But inside the studio, the mood was a mix of awe and unease. A few clapped. Most sat frozen, overwhelmed. Caroline slowly placed the envelope and the USB on the table, almost like a declaration at a war tribunal. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "The truth is a flame, and I won't let it go out." For the first time in his career, Hannity looked lost. He turned to the audience, voice wavering. We need a moment to process." Then he looked back at her. "Caroline, is there anything else you want to share?" She nodded once, slowly. "I'm not done," she said, "but to understand it all, I need to show you something else." From her coat pocket, she pulled a small photo, face down in her palm. The studio leaned in as the air seemed to constrict. Then a loud crack echoed backstage. Like glass shattering, the audience jumped. Some stood, eyes darting toward the sound. Panic simmered just beneath the surface. But Caroline stood firm. Her hand clenched around the photo, her face stoic. The table with the envelope and USB suddenly felt like ground zero for something unraveling. Hannity stiffened, a hand to his earpiece. "Caroline," he said, "we've just gotten a security alert. Do you have any idea what's going on?" He glanced at the photo. "And what is that? What are you going to show us?" She took a breath, scanning the room like someone expecting a sniper's red dot. "I don't know who's out there," she said, her voice low but unbreakable. "But I do know they don't want me to continue. That's why I have to." She raised the photo, its glossy back catching the light. "This isn't just a picture. It's proof I wasn't alone. The night I met the Pope." Hannity leaned in. "Wait, are you saying this is tied to S. Naman or something else entirely?" Caroline nodded but didn't speak right away. She turned the photo toward him first. His eyes narrowed. The image was dim, taken in a corridor of Casa Santa Marta. Caroline stood beside the Pope, shadows stretching along the stone walls. But there, in the background, behind a pillar, stood a hooded figure, cloaked, face hidden. The audience gasped. Hannity's voice cracked slightly. Who is that? A witness? A stalker?" Caroline didn't blink. She placed the photo on the table, angled away from the cameras. "I don't know," she said. Her voice trembled just for a second, then steadied. But that wasn't the only time. She reached into her coat again, producing another small envelope. "I've received 3 more photos from different places. Different years, no return address. always the same figure. She laid 2 more photos out beside the first. "Here," she said, pointing. "Same height, same build, same cloak, once in Rome, once in D.C., once outside my home in New Hampshire." Chill ran through the room. "I hired a private investigator. Nothing, no prints, no camera metadata. Whoever this is, they want me to know they're watching, but not who they are." Hannity shook his head slowly, caught between disbelief and alarm. Do you think this figure is Esnamen, or the enemy the Pope warned about?" Caroline stared straight into the lens. "I think they're connected. Maybe part of Esnamen, maybe something worse." She placed a hand on the first photo, her voice urgent. "The night I met the Pope, I thought it was just us, but this image proves someone else was there, watching, recording. And if they photographed me, then..." She looked toward the audience. "They could be here now." A ripple of dread swept through the studio. Several people turned in their seats, scanning the crowd. Hannity tried to steady the moment, but even he sounded rattled. "You're saying we could be in danger? Right now?" Caroline shrugged, a bitter smile ghosting across her lips. "I don't know," she said quietly. "But I do know this. The truth always comes with risk." She looked down at the photo in her hands. The figure still cloaked in shadow. "I brought this because I want everyone to understand. What the Pope showed me wasn't fantasy. It was a warning." She turned to the audience, voice rising, no longer tremulous, but defiant. "I'm not asking you to believe me instantly. I'm asking you to think. If there's nothing to hide, why are they so desperate to shut me up? Why the anonymous threats? Why these photos? Why the security alert? Right now?" Before the tension could settle, another metallic crash thundered. From backstage, sharper, angrier, the crowd flinched, some letting out small, frightened gasps. Hannity turned, motioning to security. But Caroline, she stood like a stone. "They're trying to scare me," she said, her voice like frost over fire. "But I made him a promise, and I'll keep it, no matter the cost." Hannity's tone sharpened with urgency. "Caroline, do you think you should stop? For the safety of everyone here?" But she shook her head, eyes ablaze with something ancient and immovable. "Stopping is surrender, and if I surrender, they win." She lifted the photo again, this time turning it toward the camera. "Look, this is why he chose me. Because I don't belong to the church, I'm not bound by silence. I can show what they've spent years hiding." Social media exploded in real time. The figure. "She knows." Vatican exposed. Some called her brave, others called her insane. But nobody looked. "Way?" Caroline gently placed the photo on the table beside the Vatican envelope and the USB, her voice low, but defiant. "This figure is one piece, but there's more, and I won't stop until the full truth sees daylight." Hannity, rattled now, stared at her, visibly shaken. "You're opening a dangerous door, Caroline. Are you ready to walk through it?" She met the camera's eye with quiet fury. "I walked through it the moment I opened that envelope, and I'm not turning back. Not now, not ever." Then, another sound, a violent bang, a backstage door forced open. The entire room recoiled, screams echoed. Panic surged, but Caroline didn't move. She stood rooted, photo still in hand, eyes scanning the shadows. The storm was no longer coming. It had arrived. Security swarmed the perimeter. Hannity's voice cracked as he tried to restore calm. "Caroline, there's a serious situation developing. You've revealed videos, photos, names. What do you expect will happen next?" She looked around the room, at the fear, the doubt, the chaos she had unleashed, and still didn't flinch. "I don't expect peace," she said simply. "I never did." Her words were like stone, unmoving, permanent. "When I opened that envelope, I knew everything would change. But I didn't come here to be praised or protected. I came here to keep a promise." Hannity signaled the audience, trying to rein in the storm, but the room remained taut, like a held breath, seconds before collapse. "You've got the world's attention now," he said, the weight of it hitting him. But do you really believe the people behind all this will just leave you alone? Caroline gave a small, bitter laugh. They're scared, she said. That's why they're lashing out. That's why they're trying to shut me down. She pointed toward the chaos behind them. You don't create this kind of noise if you have nothing to hide. Slowly, the audience settled. But phones stayed raised. Posts surged by the second. She just woke the sleeping giant. Who's behind S-Namen? Hero or hoax? But Caroline didn't seem to care. She sat down slowly, her focus returning to Hannity. Her voice was steady, clear. I don't expect everyone to believe me tonight, but I do hope they ask questions. She leaned forward slightly. If there's nothing to hide, why silence me at all? Hannity hesitated, then pressed forward. You've shown us the envelope, the video, the photos. But Caroline, what about your job, the White House, the president? Do they know what you've done here tonight? For the first time, a flicker of hesitation crossed her face. I haven't told anyone, she admitted. They think I came here to talk about policy. They have no idea. Her voice dropped, honest and raw. When this show ends, my phone will light up. I'll get calls, warnings, maybe worse. I may lose trust. I may lose my job. She looked up again, and this time there was nothing but steel. But I'm not doing this for my career. I'm doing this because someone had to. I'm doing this for something bigger, Caroline said, her voice unwavering, gaze locked beyond the studio lights. In her mind, she could already see it, stepping out into a swarm of flashing cameras, reporters shouting questions. They'd ask, do you regret this? Are you afraid? Where's the proof? And her answer would be the same as now. I don't regret it, because if I don't speak, who will? Suddenly, a studio staffer rushed over, whispering urgently into Hannity's ear. His expression darkened. Caroline, there's a group outside, unidentified. They're demanding to see you. Security's holding them back, but it's getting tense. Do you want to pause? She didn't even blink. No, she said, fierce. Pausing is what they want. Then she lifted the photo again. The mysterious figure illuminated under the stage lights. What I've shown you, the envelope, the video, the photos, that's just the surface. The Pope feared something bigger, something not just about the church, but all of us. And I will not let that truth be buried. The crowd began clapping, unsure, caught between awe and fear. A woman in the front row stood up. She's telling the truth. Don't let them silence her. But another leaned in, whispering, this is going too far. It's madness. Caroline heard them both, but her eyes remained on the camera, like she was speaking to every living room in America. I'm not asking for protection, she said. I'm asking for awareness, because the truth doesn't need me to exist, it just needs to be heard. Hannity leaned forward, completely absorbed. What's next? When you walk off this stage, what happens to you? Caroline's expression softened, even as her voice remained steady. I'm going home, she said. I hug my son. I tell my husband I did the right thing. She held up her phone, the screen flashing with another warning. S-Nominee does not forgive. You chose the wrong side. She read it aloud, steady, clear. The audience gripped in breathless tension. Then she calmly placed the phone down. They think they can shake me, but I grew up in New Hampshire where my grandmother taught me. Faith means standing still when everything else falls apart, and I'm still standing. Another sound cracked from backstage. This time, security shouting. Hannity stood, urgency in his voice. Caroline, security says the situation's escalating. We might need to cut the broadcast. But she stood too, still holding the photo, her posture unbreakable. Let them come, she said. I've said what I needed to, but this isn't the end. It's the beginning of a fight we all must face. The audience was split. Some stood, clapping through their fear. Others stayed seated, paralyzed by the weight of what they'd just witnessed. Twitter erupted. She just took on the Vatican. Who is a nominee? This is a dangerous PR stunt. Protect her at all costs. Caroline turned to Hannity one last time. Her eyes didn't waver. "I don't know what's waiting outside," she said, "but I kept my promise. That's what matters." For the first time all night, Hannity had no words. He looked at her, truly looked, and then faced the camera. "We've just witnessed something historic," he said, voice quiet. "Caroline, thank you, and be careful." She nodded, facing the camera as if to imprint one final message on the world. Truth isn't easy, but it's worth fighting for. The studio dimmed. Security began moving in. The crowd rose to their feet, many shouting, "Caroline, don't stop! Keep going!" But she didn't look back. She clutched the photo like a compass, walking toward the storm she had unleashed. Outside, police sirens wailed. The crowd swelled, shouting, shoving, desperate for answers. Clips flooded every social platform. Caroline reading the threat, aloud, holding the photo like a weapon, standing her ground. One user wrote, "She just challenged an invisible force, brave or insane." Another, "She needs protection, now." When she finally reached her apartment in D.C., the moonlight cast soft shadows on her living room floor. She sat on the couch, opened her phone, and there they were, dozens of messages, friends, journalists, unknown numbers, but one stood out. No sender. The message read, "S nominee is not the enemy. Find us where the light begins." Her heart stuttered. She remembered the Pope's voice in that dream. "You'll see darkness before the light." Was S nominee an enemy or a guide? Then, a knock. She opened the door to find a package, unmarked. Inside, a wooden rosary, smooth with age, its scent familiar, like the church pews of her childhood, and a handwritten note. "Would you like?" The next VO to open with what's written on the note and shift the tone into the next phase of her journey, the mystery deepening and the fight truly beginning. "Son Namen lives. Go where the flame is lit." The note was short, mysterious, and terrifying. Caroline gripped the wooden rosary in her palm, the one that smelled faintly of old pews and forgotten prayers. She could almost hear her grandmother whispering behind her, "Don't be afraid, little one." But she was afraid, because she knew the flame could mean the Vatican, or something else hidden in the shadows, something older, deeper, and more dangerous. She stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. No longer the quiet girl from New Hampshire. Now she was someone on the edge of something historic, or fatal. Her phone buzzed. A name lit up the screen. White House advisor. "Caroline," the voice said sharply. "The president wants to see you. What you said last night caused a storm. You need to explain yourself." She didn't reply. Just hung up, because she knew what that meeting was, and a trap wrapped in civility. They wouldn't ask for the truth. They'd ask for silence. Outside, a car rolled slowly past her house. Its headlights glided over her window. Someone was out there, watching, like the cloaked figure in the photo, waiting. She sat down and began to write a letter to her son. "Mom did this so you could grow up in a world where truth still matters. Forgive me if I was wrong." She folded the letter with trembling hands and placed it inside the safe next to the Vatican envelope. Then she walked to the window, looking up at the starlit sky. "I promised him," she whispered, as if the Pope could hear, "and I'll see it through." She slipped on her coat, clutching the rosary like armor. At the street corner, a shadow stood under the flickering lamplight, cloak rippling in the wind. Friend or foe? Caroline didn't know, but she didn't turn back. Online, the world was still reeling. Hashtags burned through social media. Son Namen, truth or terror? Caroline Leavitt speaks one. Anonymous account wrote, "She just opened Pandora's box. Pray for her." And in the darkness, Caroline kept walking. Each step is uncertain, but each step is a statement. I won't run. She didn't know if she was headed toward the Vatican, a hidden church, or straight into confrontation with S.E. Naaman, whatever or whoever that was. But this wasn't just a journey, it was a reckoning. The rosary tightened in her grip. Her heart beat louder than the city around her. Somewhere ahead, the flame waited, and with faith in one hand and fear in the other, Caroline walked toward it. Caroline Leavitt's story, exposing secrets tied to Pope Francis on live television, cuts to the heart of the American struggle between truth and power. She faced the same pressures many do in our society: threats, silence, career risk. But she stood her ground, armed only with evidence, a grandmother's faith, and the love for her son. Her story echoes every whistleblower, every journalist, every truth-teller who dared to speak when the world said, "Stay quiet." This isn't just about a Vatican envelope. It's about what we value as a society: freedom of speech, faith, family, and the price of truth. Caroline's journey, chased by unknown forces, pressured by government power, protected by nothing but her beliefs, is a reflection of all who fight for something bigger than themselves. So what would you do? Would you speak out like Caroline? Or walk away when the cost gets too high? In today's world, where every truth becomes a battlefield, her story reminds us the flame is real, but to keep it lit takes everything. Subscribe to this channel to follow Caroline's next steps, the truth behind S. Namen, and the secrets still hidden in the Vatican's shadows. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video with more revelations.